You're listening to episode 32 of the Ento Podcast, and on this week's show we look at farm animals can eat insects and algae to prevent deforestation, fertile ground, sustainable practices in prison lead to a sustainable future, Oxford's best known landmarks as you've never seen them before, and the 2017 Arizona Insect Festival covers all that flies, crawls and stings. So all that's coming up in this week's episode of the Ento Podcast, so stay tuned.
Looking to stay up to date on all things entomorphagy? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Ento Podcast with your host, Ross Bell.
Hi, and welcome to episode 32 of the Ento Podcast, the show that brings you the latest news and views from the world of entomophagy and insects as animal feed. I'm your host, Ross. So this week we've got 4 stories for you. And the first story comes from The Guardian. It's by Bibi van de Zee, and it's entitled Farm Animals Can Eat Insects and Algae to Prevent Deforestation. The Extinction and Livestock Conference in London was held partly to celebrate the 50th birthday of the CIWF, the Compassion in World Farming, where they discussed that farm animals could be fed on insects and algae, potentially preventing significant amounts of deforestation and water and energy waste. Growing and capturing feed for industrially farmed animals is an inefficient use of the world's resources, according to a WWF report released for the conference. And according to scientist Catherine Richardson, one of the 15 experts commissioned by the UN to report on their sustainability goals, we've now broken through 4 out of 9 of the planetary boundaries defined as a precondition to sustainable development because of agriculture. Many corporations believe that the public don't care or know about the problems with feed, said Duncan Williamson, WWF's food policy manager. But as he points out, the intensive system has a global impact on biodiversity. It's the number 1 cause of biodiversity loss. The use of using insects and algae for animal feed would require far less land and resources. Entocycle is one of the companies that makes feed out of black soldier flies that have been fed on food waste, while algae can be grown in much smaller areas, comparatively speaking to the amount of land needed for soy, and it's naturally superior. Kate Wolfenden of Project X, a WWF offshoot, says that work on alternative materials for feed has been happening for a number of years now, but the alternative feeds are still more expensive in comparison to grains and soy, as there's not the volumes needed for the industries to use. Project X's Feed X program is hoping to get 10% of the global industry to be able to commit to procuring alternative feeds at a scale, and they're hoping to do that by 2020. So it seems to be coming up more in the news now about the use of black soldier fly and algae being used as feed for animals. And it's good that WWF are now sort of reporting on this. I mean, it's getting more traction in the papers and getting public awareness out there. So the second story this week is Fertile Ground, Sustainable Practices in Prison Lead to a Sustainable Future. It's by Taylor McAvoy, and it was in the Real Change News. After years behind bars, Nick Hatchney was walking alongside a prison wall when he noticed a plant growing from a crack in the concrete. He identified with the plant and decided he would find a way to make something of his time in prison, and he used the metaphor in his 2014 TEDEX talk at Monroe Correctional Complex, or MCC. With the help of his friend Rory Brown and correctional staff, Hatchney began developing a vermiculture program, a composting method using worms. A portion of the prison's food waste could be composted instead of being sent to landfill. Hatchney and Brown started with 1 compost bin and 200 worms. The vermiculture program has since grown to 22 bins, housing more than 7 million worms. It also gave inmates a chance to learn a valuable skill that they could realistically use upon release. In his TEDx talk, Hatchney described a parallel between his vermiculture composting work and his own experience with incarceration. People used to disregard the cost to the planet of throwing garbage in a hole in the ground. And likewise, people don't pay enough attention to the cost of releasing someone from a prison without any support. Actually, he says a part of the solution can be summed up in 1 word: relevance. This is the main reason he gets up every day, is to take care of millions of worms. Everyone wants to feel relevant, that their lives and actions count for something, Hatchney said in his TEDx talk. Especially prisoners, who in our society have lost virtually all relevance. Sustainable programs can restore that relevance. It also helps prisoners build sustainable practices in their own lives so they don't end up incarcerated again. A 2014 study from the RAND Corporation, a a research and analysis non-profit, suggests educational prison programs significantly reduce recidivism. While incarcerated in 2010, Hatchney became a member of a sustainability committee, including inmates and correctional staff. The committee was formed partially in response to the Sustainability in Prisons program, a non-profit partnership with Evergreen State College and the Washington Department of Corrections to bring education and sustainability to prisons. This committee found that the prison was spending nearly $65,000 a year disposing of food waste, and they found a way to reduce these costs. While taking a correspondence class through the Mail on sustainable practices, he discovered vermiculture composting. The composting program has been used as a model in other prisons within the MCC and throughout the state. Hatchney and the worm farm team developed a worm breeding program and donated more than 2 million worms to Walla Walla Penitentiary, Washington Corrections Center for Women, as well as others. The men working in the program have also built worm bins for the community organizations, and the program helps participants make positive changes in their lives. So I'll put a link to the rest of this story. The next story we've got is Oxford's best-known landmarks as you've never seen them before, and this is by Nathan Bryant in the Oxford Mail. Some of Oxford's most recognisable buildings were lit up for one night only in a dazzling display of colours, with organisers hailing the stunt a runaway success. The Museum of Natural History, the Ashmolean, were bathed in glorious lights on Friday as part of a unique gathering centred on Oxford University building. The Society of Light and Lighting, which ran its third night of Heritage Light, teamed up with university staff who were entertaining thousands at the Curiosity Carnival held across the city. Leslie Patterson, who organised the Curiosity Carnival, said thousands of people had visited Oxford to take part in the events and be wowed by the settings. The event was organised as Oxford celebrated European Researchers' Night 2017, along with hundreds of other cities across the continent. And Dr. Patterson said she was particularly surprised by the number of children who, despite cultural norms, showed no fear digging into bugs at an event, highlighting how people can get protein from less traditional sources. She said, "I couldn't believe the amount of children who didn't think twice about eating bugs. Culturally, we're not brought up to think about eating them as a protein source, but they didn't think twice." The event takes over a year to plan and develops a Curiosity Carnival 2.0 and will need to wait until later than 2018 until it hits Oxford streets again. There's been lots of stories where we talk about educating children about eating bugs, and there's something that I've noticed while I've done shows is that children, where they haven't been trained in sort of what is good to eat and what's bad to eat, generally gravitate towards bugs. It's something, I think it's something instinctual in all of us at a young age, that these are edible and they're good for you. I'm going to have to see whether I can find more research on children's responses to eating insects and whether it is just something deep-seated within us that we did it thousands of years ago, and somewhere deep in the brain we still know that we can eat these things and they are good for us. Final story today is the 2017 Arizona Insect Festival. Covers all that flies, crawls and stings. October started off with a buzz as the University of Arizona hosted the annual Arizona Insect Festival. Organized by the Department of Entomology, the event attracts thousands of curious people each year, with the number of attendees steadily growing, according to data from the website. This year, the festival was hosted in the Environmental and Natural Resource 2 building and revolved around pollinators, the insects that fly from plant to plant in order to spread pollen and help flowering plants reproduce. Many booths centered on this theme, as well as the usual petting stations and insects as food booths. All the booths were run by volunteers, faculty members and other organizations, including the Arizona Sonoran Desert Museum and the Saguaro National Park. This year's festival featured a set of lectures from leading UA entomologists, with discussions about a future where people may get some of their nutrition from eating bugs, talks about bombardier beetles, who produce chemicals to protect themselves against predators, while other talks focus on parasitic wasps, chemical pesticides and stinging insects. There was a Ask a Scientist cafe where graduate students from the Department of Entomology hosted 3 different panel discussions where the audience could ask questions about insects they may find in their garden, insects as food, where festival attendees had the opportunity of trying insect snacks while learning more about insects as food. Some of the offerings here included mealworms sorted with onions and cricket cookies, Nature's Notebook, which is an organisation that works closely with the UA. It's a national site that allows Arizona citizens to contribute data about Arizona's wildlife. There's also a booth on transgenic crops for pest control. This booth focuses on the effects on pesticides, which over in the UK anyway has been a hotly debated issue, especially as the papers recently have been covering the decline in bee populations due to pesticide use. There were also several booths designed for younger attendees as well, such as the cockroach cuddling station, where children could hold cockroaches, and the Meet and Pet a Caterpillar booth, where children learned how a caterpillar turns into a butterfly and why the life stages of a butterfly looks different. So this insect festival, seems to be going on in Arizona for a long time now. It's something I wish a few universities over here in the UK would do. Again, just trying to get the younger children involved and showing that insects have got a place within the whole ecosystem and they're not just some nasty, horrible thing that needs to be destroyed. But that's it for this week. So I hope you liked the show. And if you do, remember to either leave us a comment or tell a friend about us. Because the more people we can get interested in entomophagy and insects, the better for all of us. But that's it for now, so this is Ross saying, ta-ra till next time.
Thanks so much for listening to the Ento Podcast. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit theentopodcast.co.uk and on Facebook and Twitter at the Ento Podcast. We'll catch you next time.